Justice Sonia Sotomayor graduated summa cum laude from Princeton University and then went to Yale Law School. She worked as an assistant district attorney in New York County and then at a law firm in New York. Her judicial career as a federal district judge later elevated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and ultimately she was confirmed to her current position, Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. She serves on the highest court in the land. For our students today, I want you to understand the significance of being a Supreme Court justice. The United States Supreme Court was established pursuant to Article 3 of the United States Constitution in 1789. Since the Supreme Court was established in 1789, only 112 people have served as Supreme Court justices. To give you an idea of the significance of this position, we've only had 44 presidents. They served one at a time. The justices served 9 at a time. So there have only been 112, and we have one of them here today. The Supreme Court, if you study history, has decided landmark cases throughout the time. Just to mention a few, it's the Supreme Court that struck down segregation in schools based on race in Brown v. Board of Education. It's the Supreme Court that established the right to an abortion under Roe v. Wade. Gideon versus Wainwright, to mention that case, the right to an attorney in criminal proceedings. Miranda versus Arizona. You all know Miranda and the rights of those detained by the police. Bush versus Gore, because the election had problems, they determined who the next president of the United States was. A very difficult job. Just in the last term of the Supreme Court, they upheld Obamacare, and they declared equality in marriage, legalizing gay marriage throughout the United States. Regardless of your view on any cases, it's the significance of how the Supreme Court has affected our lives and protecting our rights under the Constitution. Having a Supreme Court justice in our presence is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, an experience that most people never have. But what I want to tell you about Justice Sotomayor is what she would say is it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be here with you today, and you will see that when she comes out. Justice Sotomayor is the 111th justice to serve on the Supreme Court. She is the 3rd woman, and she is the 1st justice of Hispanic heritage to serve on the court. She began in August of 2009. As incredible as the accomplishments are that I have just recounted to you, in my view, they do not begin to explain why Justice Sotomayor is so remarkable. Justice Sotomayor was not born under some lucky star that predicted with certainty the trajectory of her life. In fact, many of the elements present in her young life would cause some people to conclude that her life might be doomed to failure and misery. She was born into poverty in the projects of New York. She was born to Puerto Rican immigrant parents. Her youth was marked with many challenges. Her first language was Spanish, not English. Her parents were not well educated. She has dealt with chronic illness, being diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 7. Her father was an alcoholic and died when she was 9 years old. She was raised by a single mother. Many of us can relate to the challenges faced by Justice Sotomayor in one way or another. I asked the justice 2 years ago to come to Stockton. Knowing her incredibly busy schedule, that was a big ask. And I know that she told me yes because She told me here, she said, I said yes to you, and she said yes to my proposal. I told her the story of our community, who we are, and why her story would inspire us. She's come 3,000 miles to be here with us today. I believe that the challenges that we face in our community, both individually and collectively, resonated with her when I spoke to her that day. I think that the following quote from the Justice's memoirs, which you must read her book, and you're going to really want to read it after you hear her comments today, and we are selling it here as well, but you must read it. And I want to read a quote from her memoirs, which talks about why she wrote the book, and I think it tells you why she's here today. What Justice Sotomayor said in the preface of her book was, "Most perplexing of all was the question that inspired this book. How much did I owe to having had a happy childhood?" What she said was, "I struggled with that one. Until this book, I have not spoken about some of my darker experiences growing up, and I would not have considered myself unqualifiedly happy as a child. Ultimately, though, I realized I did have sources of deep happiness, and these bred in me an optimism that proved stronger than any adversity." She also said, "Underlying all these questions was a sense that my life story touches people because it resonates with their own circumstances. The challenges I have faced, among them material poverty, chronic illness, and being raised by a single mother, are not uncommon, but neither have they kept me from uncommon achievements. For many, it is a source of hope to see someone realize her dreams while bearing such burdens. Having caught people's attention in this way, I've thought long and hard about what lessons my life might hold for others, young people especially. How is it that adversity has spurred me on instead of knocked me down? What are the sources of my own hope and optimism? Most essentially, my purpose in writing the book is to make my hopeful example accessible. People who live in difficult circumstances need to know that happy endings are possible." Well, lucky for us, you don't just have to hear that quote from me, but you need to read her book. We have the real person here today. Today, right here, right now, students and attendees prepare to listen, to learn, to be inspired, and believe that a happy ending is possible for all of us. I bring to this stage Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Thank you.
Go get him.
Hello. Hello. Hi. Thank you. It still scares me a little bit when I come before a crowd this big. I don't think ever in my lifetime did I ever imagine that people would greet me with this kind of warmth in an audience as large as this. But I thank you all for being here and for taking the time to share some time with me. Having said that, I'm here because of one person, the judge. I hoped you checked out her shoes and her dress. I did. But she's an amazing, amazing person. And when she spoke to me about the AWL, she hit all of the themes that are so important to me. But the one that is most critical, she promised me that I would have young people here. And she honored her promise. And why is that important to me? It's important because having grown up the way I did, with the challenges that I lived through, I understand the need for hope. Because if I hadn't found some in my life, those challenges would have overcome me. And the reality is that for some people, those are challenges they can't deal with. And what I wanted my book to do, and what I want my life to do, is to talk to people who have lost hope and give them a reason to come back to think there might be. And so, thank you, Connie, for inviting me today, and thank you for honoring my request. I have a lot of people who ask me, what is it that made you think, when you were young, that you could even go to college? I had no one in the family here in New York who had graduated from college. So what set up that expectation? As you'll learn in my book, a lot of it was my mother and her drive to educate my brother and I to the best degree she could. But some of it was examples. I was fortunate enough, unlike every other friend I had, every other relative, female, none of them worked. And there were moments when my mother went off to work where I felt disadvantaged. Everyone else had a mom at home, a mom who liked cooking, mine didn't, a mom who wasn't overburdened with the choices that professional life placed on people. But I would go to my mother's hospital, and this was when I was younger, and she was a floor nurse, but every leader of the nursing unit in my mother's hospital was a woman. The nursing supervisor was the most elegant, intelligent, and caring African-American woman that I had ever met in my earlier life. And everyone in that hospital loved her. My mom tells me that she started her delivery pains while she was working, and Mrs. Gibbs drove her to the hospital where I was delivered. All of her assistant supervisors were women, African-American, Latina women. As I grew up a little bit more, I went to have my diabetes treated, and for the first time, I saw a doctor who was a woman. And just recently, her niece reached out to me and told me about her life after I had lost touch with her. And Dr. Paulson gave me a model to look up to. It wasn't lost on me that the only people who were doctors in my mother's hospital were men. And it wasn't lost on me that women in most of the fields that I saw as a child were men. The bosses were always men. But I had living examples that I could think of emulating that gave me that hope. That's why what ALW is doing is so important. You kids up there have to look at the women and the men in this room who care enough about you to give you hope by setting an example. You know, many, many years ago, I went to a law function, and there was a reception afterwards, and a bunch of young women lawyers came, students, I should say, they're women, but they were young students, surrounded me and said, "It's so nice that you wear up-to-date clothes." You know, all of the judges up to now are a little matronly. Well, you have two examples of people who have worked successfully and one much more unmatronly than Judge Callahan, okay? And you laugh. But these things are important. It is important not to live in society's stereotypes. You see, kids, you think that you're poor, so you can't succeed. You might think you're a woman, or even a little boy, it doesn't matter, that comes from a challenged background, maybe a parent like mine with alcoholism problems, maybe some family members with addictions. Almost all of us, either ourselves or someone we care about deeply, has a chronic disease that makes them very, very sick. And if you live in other people's expectations, you'll never be able to dream yourself. Other people give you the sense that you can't succeed. But that's something you have to fight believing, because it just isn't true. You can succeed. And there's people throughout this audience and people that you will meet in life, including teachers and others, who will show you that there is hope. And that's so, so important. I'm going to come down, and the people in the audience who have contributed to this lunch, I'm going up there to see the kids. All right? All right, you guys. Hey! All right. Let me say something to you guys. You see all these people around me, men and women? They all have little earplugs in their head. It's in their head. It's not in their ears, okay? They're not here. They think they're here, and you think they're here to protect me from you, right? No, they're here to protect me from myself. They don't like that I'm leaving the stage. It makes their job a lot harder, okay? I do it anyway. But I do it because I'm going to ask you not to scare them. Don't get up and come at me, because that sudden movement really makes them nervous. All right? So I'm going to come up, I'll come near you, and I'm going to keep talking as I'm walking around, and I'll shake hands, and I'll touch your shoulder, and I'll say hello, okay? Oops. I'm blinded by the light. Hold on. Oh, those lights are blinding. Hello, you guys. Hi. Well, you look young, but young from where? I'm from Modesto. Okay. All right. Is that a college or a high school? Oh, it's a law school. All right. You'll hear me talk a little bit more later about law school. There's nothing fun about the study of law. It's really hard. But there is something fun about the process of each other. And the one wonderful thing about law school for me was the many friends I made there. Friends who have followed me doing different things throughout my career. So even though you're really busy studying, don't forget the opportunity law school gives you to meet people who are as committed as you are, who have the same passion you do for law. So while you're studying, every once in a while, get a cup of coffee. or a Diet Coke, or whatever it is you drink today, okay? My point is, learn to value each other and spend time with each other, okay? That'll give you some fun to what could be miserable at times. Oops, I need a hand. I'm having a very hard time seeing. Okay.
Light should be blinding.
Yeah, the light is completely blinding, guys. Can you see me without being blinded? Hi. Hello. Hello. All right, you guys tell me where you're from.
Bear Creek High School. Bear Creek.
Okay, and you're adults. All right, and where's Fair Creek High School?
Right here.
All right. Now, who's the school next to you? Okay. All right. Are there any other schools up here? All right. I'm going to do something that's going to upset the people down there, but because they have somebody asking me a lot of questions, but I'm going to let you ask me questions. All right? Because I don't know what interests you, and I don't want to bore you anymore. So why don't you, somebody, take charge and ask me a question? Tell me your name.
Carla.
Hello, Carla. What year are you in high school?
I'm a senior.
Ooh, where are you going next year? Do you know yet?
No, not yet.
What are you hoping for?
Hoping for Columbia.
Oh, New York is very different than Stockton. But it's a great place to live, okay?
My question, if you were to give us like a quote for all our young Latina ladies, because this is Lala, what would it be?
I was just asked to give a quote to the students who are part of LALA, which is the Latino. I have to think about that a little bit. It is very cool to be a Latina. And you know why it's cool? We're beautiful. We're sexy. We're smart. And we can dance. And I'm not jesting. It's the fact that we have really big hearts. There's virtually no Latina I know who doesn't. Think of your mothers, all right? How many people do they take under their wing and care for? Particularly you, okay? Think of your grandmothers. I speak about my grandmother in my book. She took care of everybody. But it's the fact that despite everything life throws at us as Latinas, every Latina I know, almost everyone, still has hope. Think about it. I bet if your moms haven't been able to achieve their dreams, like Mom didn't achieve all her dreams, all they keep saying to you is, "Mija, you can." I see every head shaking, okay? Good enough quote?
Yes.
All right. Who else is going to take the chance? Aquí me vengo. All right. Thank you for shaking my hand because you make me feel more secure. I'm afraid of heights. All right. Whose hand was that? Ven. Dígame quién es. Thank you. Tell me who you are.
My name's Jess.
Hello, Jess. Come. Give me a hug. All right. Okay.
Okay, my question is, like maybe when you were in college or in law school, even facing adversity and people telling you that you can't, do what you wanted to do, what did you think? What would you always tell yourself to keep yourself going?
You know, I lost heart during my nomination to the Supreme Court. Just like I had at various stages of my life when people told me, wishful thinking, it's never going to happen. I tell the story in my book of going to a community organization in law school for a summer job, and one of the interviewers asked me what I wanted to be as a lawyer. What did I want to do in 5 years? And I was very honest with him, and I said, I'm really not sure. That's why I'm looking for this internship. And I want to try different things and figure out. But I'm going to tell you what I want to be in 20 years. He said, what? And I said, a federal district court judge. I heard later from a very dear friend who was working for that organization that he reported that I was a little naive. All right? And I didn't get the job, okay? He tells me now that what he really meant was that I didn't need the job. Okay. All right. Well, what I chose to do is probably not smart, but I stopped talking about my dream anymore. I never repeated the dream to anybody. And at points, I stopped repeating it to myself. But during the Supreme Court process, after almost 17 years of being a judge, and I thought I had a great reputation with my colleagues. Many of them were very dear friends. I had friends among lawyers, but all of a sudden, people are writing that I wasn't smart enough. And they were quoting lawyers as saying that I was just too nasty and all this other stuff, okay? I wasn't supposed to read the news, but it was really hard to ignore that. And it hurt. It hurt so deeply, and it shook my confidence. It really did. And at one point, I actually thought, why am I doing this? I'm going to go through this process, and maybe I'll get the job. And if I do, my reputation will be destroyed. I should just leave. Well, thought about it, and started to talk to my friends about it. And every one of them was ready to hit me over the head with a bat. And I say this because this is really important. A lot of us live with fears inside ourselves that we're, I don't know if it's ashamed, we're frightened to share with others. And those fears can eat away at your stomach. And it's often those fears that stop us from doing things that could move our life forward. And what you need always, and this is my definition of a friend, which is it's someone who will listen to those fears, comfort you, and then kick you in the behind. All right? A friend is not a yes person. And a friend is not someone who says no. A friend is someone who says, it's possible. Let's figure out how to do it. And that's what my friends did. So that's what I did. All right. Gracias. Thank you. I don't know. Every time I decide to come up in places like this, I wear the worst shoes. I should wear flats, right? Right. Okay. Tell me your name.
I'm Julia Lopez,
And what year in school are you?
senior,
And what are you thinking of doing next year?
going into business.
Wow. That's really wonderful. So who do you have as a mentor to do that?
My mentor,
Yeah, who's helping you figure out how to do it?
Basically like my aunt and my uncle.
Great. Okay, so you have a mentor.
Yeah.
And pick his brain, okay?
Huh?
Pick his brain.
Oh, we'll do, yeah.
All right? Okay, go ahead.
My question is like, what advice would you give like a senior going into like college next year? Like what's like most important?
Most important advice I give to seniors, to students generally. And it's one of the reasons I went for law and not some other fields. My brother is a doctor, and he has said to me as an adult that one of the things he regrets about having studied to be a doctor is that he never became a well-rounded person. He never took courses that were broader than medicine. And that now, as he's older, he regrets that and has to fight harder to learn things that he knows I know and that others who he admires knows, okay? And in law, you can major in anything you want. All they want to see is that you do it well, okay? And so that's really what law is about, but I'm not trying to sell law. What I'm trying to sell is leaders generally are people who are interesting. They're interesting typically because they have passion about something. And almost every leader you talk to who has a passion about something can rattle off statistics like you couldn't believe. Off the top of their heads, they'll tell you, 10% of this, 7% of that, and they'll just go down through facts and facts and facts about the problem that they're involved in. And they catch you up in their enthusiasm, okay? So how do you get to learn that stuff? Well, you have to become yourself capable of being an interesting person. And how do you develop that capacity? In college. It's called a liberal arts education. And what that means is taking risks in college. Don't take the courses that appeal to you because you know something about them. Take the courses you don't know anything about. Let yourself explore the possibility that you might like something that you don't know. Take introductory courses in areas that people know about and that you want to know about. Take an art course. Take a religion course. All right? I'm sure every one of you either has a religion or your parents have a religion. And you know the basic tenets, but how many of you can tell me the tenets of other religions? And do you know that most of the world's problems right now involve religious differences? You should know something about them, huh? You don't have to master them, but you should have a sense of them. Take a philosophy course. Take an economics course. You can't read a newspaper without there being some discussion of economics. And so these are things and courses that regardless of the major you end up in, you should have as part of the background of you as an individual. I'm not an expert in any of those other things, but I have enough basic knowledge from college that when I pick up things and read them, I understand the terminology, and I can grapple with the concept. And that helps make you a leader, because you will use that knowledge, maybe not directly. You're not going to give a tour in an art museum unless you're really comfortable and fall in love with art, okay? But I'll tell you, you won't make much money. But I know plenty of people who do, and they love what they do. And in the end, it shouldn't be about money. It should be about the fun of learning. I guess I'm being told I stayed up here too long, Pam?
Hello, Justice. Maybe we can have this conversation while you're...
All right, come on, Jason. They're dragging me down, sorry. Oops. Hello. Thank you. Hi. Ah,
Justice?
thank you. I'm coming down. I'm coming down. Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here. Absolutely.
Perhaps on the way down, you might want to take a moment and answer a question that I suspect is on so many people's minds here. What is a typical day like for a justice of the Supreme Court?
Well, for most of you, it would seem boring. We do a huge amount of reading and writing and thinking. Most days when we're not in court session, that's what I'm doing. I'm reading the briefs and the cases for the arguments that are coming up. I'm reading the memos and the draft opinions that my colleagues have sent. I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking about what my response is, whether I'll join it, whether I'll dissent, whether I'll write separately because I agree with the result. That's called a concurrence, but I don't agree with the thinking. And so, for me, that's a typical day. Because that would drive me crazy if that's all I ever did. I also speak to groups who come visit the Supreme Court. We have close to 500,000 visitors to the court each year. The court gives people tours, and everybody should try to go to Washington someday. I didn't go to Washington until I was after law school. It was the first time I ever visited Washington, and I waited too long. It's the nation's capital, and whether you want to be a lawyer or not, every citizen should know what happens in the Capitol. You should have a basic knowledge of your government and its functioning. Don't say no to something until you know what it is. And so, for the young students in this room, I'm working with an organization called iCivics.org. iCivics is a computer program where you play games and learn about the government. It's fun. I'm part of this because I like learning when it's fun. Go play the games and beat my scores, okay? Now, on argument days, I get to court and I try to get, where am I going, guys? This way? I'm walking in the right direction, Pam. On those days, I get to court around 9 o'clock. I wait to see if any special memos have been sent by my colleagues on a case. Often we get letters from the parties who are going to argue, telling us some new information. But at 10 o'clock or 5 to 10, a bell rings, and I go from my second floor to the first floor into our robing room. I put on my robe, and we go into our justices' conference room, and we shake each other's hand. We never go out to argument without all 9 justices greeting each other with a handshake. What do we talk about? The case that's coming up? Never. We talk about at lunch and at these conferences when we have lunch together. We talk about the movies we've seen, trips we've taken, what some of them have children, what the kids are doing, what interesting article appeared in the newspaper. We're trying to just be friends, to talk to each other as people. Because when the clock strikes 10, we walk out into the courtroom and argument starts. And what argument is every person who has a case heard by the Supreme Court, the person who brought the case before the court, the petitioner, gets a half hour to try to convince us that they're right. The respondent, the person who won below, is responding to that person, and they get half an hour. Petitioner can save a few minutes to have a rebuttal and answer back, but we usually have 2 cases a day, occasionally 3. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, it doesn't sound like a lot of work. We only hear about 70, 75 cases a year. Is that a full-time job? Well, it really is. One of my colleagues one day, in the first healthcare case a year ago, or 2 years ago, counted up the briefs and friends of court who submitted briefs and the lower court decisions, and said we had to read 12,000 pages of briefing. I would say that number is probably comparable in many of our cases. Probably more in the same-sex marriage cases. The amount of reading we do can stagger the imagination. Now, that argument day, after argument, the justices eat lunch together, and I told you what we talk about. On Wednesdays, we meet together in a conference after lunch, and we then vote on the cases we heard Monday. Then we hear Tuesday and Wednesday's cases, and we vote on them at a conference on Friday morning. The other part of our job is to review all the petitions for certiorari. And what that basically means, it's the petitions that people submit to us saying, please hear my case. And we get about 8,500 of those a year. And we don't meet every Friday, but we meet most Fridays of the term, from October to June. And we spend the morning going through the cases we think might have some value to hear. And we vote. We go around the room on every single case and say yes or no. It takes 4 justices to get a case heard. We have to read the materials for those 8,500 cases. And so we get a bench memo, which is a memo from our law clerks that tell us what the case is about and where they think the state of the law is. And we as justices review that and decide whether we want to hear the case. As you can imagine, that is a time-consuming process in and of itself. So, am I the only one who meets with groups? No. Almost all of the justices do. We get groups of all kinds. We get book clubs, bar admission groups, lawyers who are coming to be admitted. We get clubs that are just made up of interest in a special topic that the court is involved in or has been involved in. We get groups from around the world. And all of us talk to some of them each day. And we then have activities after work where we're working. Okay? I'm here talking to you. Justices will go to talk to law students. They'll go to talk to groups of all kinds. And we discuss both our work and what we do. Now I'm going to take a break, Pam, and walk down the stairs. No, okay. Somebody in front of me. Just, thanks. Hello, you guys. You didn't think I was coming over here, right? They know me well enough. Hi, how are you? Hello. Hi. 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 It's better to have the lights to your back.
What's Justice Sonia like?
Whoa. He's actually a lot of fun. I was asked what Justice Scalia was like. He loves and loves to sing. And every once in a while, when we're talking about a case, he'll come up with a song that nobody's ever heard of. And he'll start singing it. He tells great jokes, and he's a good colleague. He's really, really smart. And sometimes I wouldn't write the way he does. But he can be fun. Pam?
So, Justice, we have so many young people in the room, and your story is so inspiring to them. When I read your wonderful book, and I highly recommend all of you read it, you describe growing up in a very ordinary, if not disadvantaged, situation. But what I read in there was not only about a young woman who had hope, but a young woman who was determined and would work hard and would seek out opportunities to better yourself wherever possible. Would you give some examples to the young people in this room about how they can gather people that will help them, advise them, even when they're concerned that they just aren't as knowledgeable or talented as the other people in the room?
I describe in my book being in grammar school and realizing at one point that I didn't want to be in the bottom of the class. I wanted to figure out how to be on the top of the class. But I didn't really know how. And I guess today in the age of internet, you can go on the internet and you'll get some advice on the internet. But back then, we didn't have an internet. And although we had libraries, even accessing information in the libraries was hard. Where do you start saying, how do I study? And I guess I could have gone to a teacher, but I wasn't sure that the teacher could speak my language, meaning could explain it to me in a way I would understand. So it was almost intuitive. I thought to myself, let me go ask the smartest girl in the class how she studies. And Donna, who's still a friend, was a little taken aback. Nobody had ever asked her how she studied. But she told me how she studied. She told me about underlining things. That was a little hard because my mother didn't like me to underline books. So I took paper clips instead. And she told me about summarizing what I had learned so that it would help me remember it. And she explained to me about how she thought about what she was studying. She didn't really just memorize it. She tried to figure out what it meant, what she was doing, and the all-important question, why was she doing it? What was this trying to teach her? And at any rate, with that information, I started to figure out how to study. And I eventually did get to the top of my class. Some mistakes along the way. But I figured out myself what were the hard things for me to remember, what were the easier things for me to remember. On the harder things, I found mechanisms to remember better. I'm still horrible at geography. Don't ask me why. But I used to have little index cards with the name of the state and the name of the capital. You'd think I remember it today, but I don't. But I tried. I think that is, Pam, too many people are ashamed of saying the words, I don't know. It leaves me speechless in court, in front of the Supreme Court, 9 of the smartest lawyers there are, and some litigant is asked a question and they're trying to make up an answer. The best advice I can tell people is when the court does that, tell them, Justice, I haven't thought about that enough. Don't make up an answer. Because you're going to get caught. But that's really a life secret, is being courageous enough to know when you don't know, and courageous enough to ask for help. And in almost every setting I'm in, when I'm in court or when I joined as a judge, when I didn't understand something or know something, I would call a colleague. One of my favorite stories is my first year on the court. Justice John Paul Stevens was there. It was the only year we overlapped. He was 90 years old, or 89 at the time. He was turning 90 the next year. And he wrote an opinion that awed me. I was so impressed with this opinion. And I called him up to congratulate him on the draft. And I admitted to him, I said, John, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I could ever write an opinion like this. And he said something to me. He said, Sonia, nobody is born a justice. You grow into becoming a justice. In your time, you have all the basic skills necessary. You will write this, maybe a little differently, but it will be as good. Well, I don't know if that's true necessarily. He was brilliant. But I do know that he gave me an enormous amount of confidence with my insecurities. And now, when I'm insecure, I always think back of his words. No one's born anything. You have to grow in positions. You have to learn from people that know more than you do. You have to watch what they do. You have to ask them questions when you don't understand. And as I said, you have to take the courage of speaking the words out loud. I don't know.
So in your book, Justice, you tell a charming story that I could relate to completely, which is growing up watching Perry Mason. Perry Mason, yes. The young people out here, you might think it's all about Law and Order, but no, Perry Mason was the beginning of these shows. And Justice, you said that that was the point where you were inspired to become a lawyer. And what I was most struck with is that you recognized that to be able to do a job like Perry Mason, you had to be able to speak in front of a group confidently and persuasively. Did that come natural to you?
No. My mother said I liked arguing. And that's probably true. Where are the kids from?
Right here.
Hello, you. Hi, how are you? Hi, welcome. Why are you so sad? Oh, okay, you gotta smile. Actually, that's something that somebody told me. People get disarmed by smiles. People really grow to like you when you smile a lot. There's very little that comes naturally in life. Even for sports athletes, they have to practice and practice and practice. Michael Jordan didn't wake up when he was a baby and dunk a basketball. All right, he just didn't. And neither does anyone else become anything naturally. You might have some aptitude. Some things may be a little easier for you than others, I don't have any aptitude for dancing. But when I was 50 years old, I finally wanted to learn how to dance. And I decided to take some instructions. And the guy who was teaching me figured out that I can't hold the beat to save my life. But then we worked at it, and he finally said to me, you know something? You can follow. That's natural to you. So he taught me how to dance by following the lead of my partner. So you can't throw me on a dance floor and watch me. I have to look at the guys who are dancing, and I only say yes to the ones whose beat I can follow. But on other things, like public speaking, I knew that I had to train myself somehow. And I joined the forensics club. And forensics is public speaking. How many of the kids have done that? Hey, up there. I joined the debate team. I joined the public speaking team. I competed among high schools and won some trophies. But I knew that I had to do something formal, get some formal training. It isn't easy talking to all these people. And there might be some people who can get up there and not feel the attention, but I knew I wasn't one of them. So I had to help learn how to do it. And that actually has been my formula throughout my entire life. A couple of friends of mine had come over to my home, and I had a group of people there, and they decided they wanted to teach people how to play poker. So I started playing with them, and I started getting a sense of the game. And after they left, I went out and bought a book. I read the book, and I'm a pretty darn good poker player now. Whatever kind of learner you are, I learn by reading, and I learn by watching. There are some people who like learning by reading, some people who like learning by writing, some people like learning by doing. There's mechanisms to do all of that. My other assistant, Dant is here with me, but I have an assistant in Washington who fixes absolutely everything in her house by looking on YouTube. She's amazing. That's why I'm saying to you, yes, Pam. You have to learn what you need to know. And you have to figure out how to access that information in a way that makes sense to you. And I use a combination of actual practice of things I'm doing, but I'm also very observant. In every workplace that I've been, I've looked around, I look at what makes people successful at the job. I find the people that I think are the most successful, and I watch them. And I try to learn what they do, and I integrate it into what I'm doing. Now, some people do things that I can't do, but I get a little bit of an idea of how to do some of it. I have a friend who's a great cross-examiner in the courtroom, but she's really quick-witted, a little bit sarcastic, and she knows how to put the knife right in the stomach, okay? And that's not my personality. How do I do it? I just keep jabbing. Little knife cuts until they bleed to death.
Justice, we have many teachers in the room. Teachers, stand up and let's recognize you. Justice, in your book, you talk about a teacher in high school. I think she was a history teacher, Miss Katz, that had a big impact on your life. Would you like to talk about?
I finally get him up here.
Would you like to talk about how teachers can inspire somebody?
I think the most important people in most individuals' lives are teachers. And if you talk to virtually any successful person, every one of them will tell you there was a teacher who opened up their excitement about learning. And I don't think that's happenstance. As I said earlier, we don't come to things naturally. We have to be shown the way. And who does that best than teachers? You're with kids 5 days a week. Sometimes you see more of the kids than their parents do. And you certainly are interacting with them, likely more than their parents do. And not as a criticism of parents, but you've got to cook meals, you've got to wash clothes, you've got to do lots of stuff. So how do you do that? I think it's the way Mrs. Katz did for me. You have to be excited and passionate about what you're doing. You have to be excited about not just teaching, but about learning. And kids can sense that. They can sense when you're having a good day or a bad day. How many teachers have heard kids come, or has a child come up to you and said, Mrs. or Mr. something, did something bad happen? That's not accidental. They're very in tune to whether you really like what you're doing. The other thing is you have to make it interesting and fun. And that's what Miss Katz did. She loved history. She loved talking about it and pointing out things in the stories we were reading that weren't a part of the book. Little tidbits of facts that made it just more human. All of that captivated my understanding that learning wasn't just about memorizing facts and spewing them back, but that learning was about analyzing facts and putting them in a picture that would tell you something broader and bigger than the fact. And that was my first exposure to analytical thinking. And that opened up a whole new world for me. She didn't completely convey how I could do it, but I understood from her that that world was out there. And I got the rest of it in college.
So let's talk about college for a moment. You were admitted to a number of Ivy League schools, an incredible accomplishment when no one in your family had gone to college, as I understand at that point, and certainly not many in your neighborhood. You talked about what it's like to go to a college where you felt different. And I suspect that there are many young people in this room who, just like the students that come to University of the Pacific, we have about 1/3 of our freshman class who are the first ones in their families to go to college. And it's not easy at all. In fact, you talked about feeling like a stranger in a strange land. How did you navigate this strange world and yet still stay true to who you were?
Well, I took a lot of comfort from people, and still do, in every setting I'm in, from people who share common life experiences with me. When I went to this alien land, I became eventually a very active member of the Third World Center, which was the minority center of school. They did away with it recently, and I thought to myself, is this a really good idea? Because people who knew how I was feeling gave me sort of an anchor that I could work from to explore the larger university. And occasionally something would come up and I'd go to one of them and say, what does this mean? How do I do this? But the one thing that I also did, and I think that it's something that helps you grow, is I didn't limit my friends just to people from the Third World Center. I explored the larger community. And I have friends from very different backgrounds. I have friends who are even rich. You laugh, but you know, their life was totally different than mine. The things that they talked about seemed unachievable to me. Yet I'm doing some of those things now. And then there's others I don't do. Because even though I have the resources, it seems that's not worth spending that much money. I tell one of my favorite stories. The weekend that I was being nominated, the White House asked my family to come to Washington. And my brother called me Sunday night and said, Sonia, what are the boys supposed to wear tomorrow? I said, Juan, they're coming to the White House. They got to wear suits. He says, but they don't own suits. Yeah. They were about 14, 15 years old and lived in Syracuse, much more casual up there. At any rate, I said, well, tomorrow's Memorial Day, you better go buy them suits. And just before he hung up, I said, Juan. He said, yeah, don't take off the price tags till we're sure you're coming to Washington. I was then a Court of Appeals judge. I'd been a judge for 17 years. My brother and I both make enough money to afford suits for the boys, and yet my background still came through. If you're embarrassed about your background, you can't hold on to it. If you can see its humor, if you can see its good parts without ignoring its bad parts, if you can accept how it has helped form the positive in you, even as it's helped form some of the negative, everything in life has good and bad. And you can't hold on to your background until you can appreciate the good things it has. You know, I have often said, I didn't feel poor when I was a child, because I had a lot of love in my life. Now, some people are poor and don't have that, but they have other things. They can have and see people around them who care. Or they can go and try to find them, whether it's teachers or people in a local community center. We have to look for the good in life and look and ask for help to be able to grow.
That's right. Those are inspiring words. Now, I'm noticing the time, so I think I only have one more question that I can ask you.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
I ate up all your time, didn't I?
No.
Okay.
You inspired all of us. It was wonderful. You talked in your book about your wonderful grandmother, Abuelita, and your mother, Mami, two very powerful and important women in your life. And it makes me reflect on women and women's leadership. Appropriate here at Advancing Women's Leadership. Do you think that there's anything special or unique about the way women can be leaders?
Now I'm going to talk in stereotypes. What I'm about to say, you can't apply uniformly to every woman. Some women have, every group of women has different styles, different approaches. But as a generality, there is more compassion in leadership in women. There's more of a willingness to listen to others rather than dictate answers. And that, I think, makes working together more inclusive. I watch a lot of business settings. I even watched it when I was in high school. I ran the campaign for the guy who won student council my senior year in high school. I was his campaign manager. He wasn't mine. I lost, he won. If you go to most business settings, there's a big boss, but who runs his life? Generally a woman, okay? But that's because we, as a group, tend to want to do something in a collective. We want to work together. We want to do things in a social way. And I think that that helps to become a very powerful leader. If we can learn to aspire to want to lead. I have a suspicion that there are many women assistants who could do the job better than their bosses. So why aren't they? And I think they're not doing it because they don't have the vision that they can. And that, I think, is a vision that we need to inspire in young people.
Recognizing that people are going to take us off the stage soon,
Okay.
is there anything else that you'd like to share with the young people and the adults in the room?
Earlier in my career, I relied on men to be my mentors and to promote me in my work. The reason for that was self-evident, because there just weren't many women in leadership positions. When I was in the DA's office, for example, there were a couple of women in Bob Morgenthau's upper echelon, but in the bottom rung of which I was a part, which was the trial level, there were no women bureau chiefs. There were no women assistant bureau chiefs. So you had to rely on men in supervisory roles to promote you. As I went to my law firm, there were 2 women. One of them became a mentor, but the managing partner was a man. And so both of them became my friends. As I've become more senior in my career, one of the wonderful things is that there are so many more women in leadership positions. And that is the example I was talking about earlier that helps inspire others. But I also think that once you achieve any kind of position of responsibility, you have an obligation to give back. You have an obligation, if you're a woman in a senior position, to mentor and to help other women achieve as well. If you're a minority, like I am, I have an obligation to give back to my community. That's why I'm here. Once you've been privileged to reach the elite class, don't forget where you came from. And so those are my parting words. Thank you.